President Cyril Ramaphosa has reiterated South Africa's position of refusing to yield to pressure by Western powers to choose sides in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. It comes after the U.S. Ambassador Reuben Brigety questioned Pretoria's non-aligned stance on foreign policy. Let's analyze this further. We're joined now by Ukraine's Ambassador to South Africa, Liubov Abravitova. Your Excellency, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time tonight. It's always interesting, since the war has started and South Africa continuing to reiterate this position, what the Ukrainians feel about this particular non-alignment stance. Is it important for Ukraine, for South Africa to choose sides in this, what South Africa sees as an international conflict?
Good evening, and thank you for having me. First of all, I would like to stress that for us, it is not important that South Africa takes the side. For us, important that South Africa respects our territorial integrity and sovereignty as of any state in the world, and adheres to the United Nations Charter. And this is what is Russian aggression in Ukraine is about. It's about violation of UN Charter, and it is about violation of territorial integrity and sovereignty of another independent state. And that's why we consider every country in the world who is the member of the United Nations to condemn Russia for its aggression.
So when you look at the events of last week, for example, the U.S. Ambassador to South Africa, Reuben Brigety, and what he said, I mean, later on we are told that he's apologized for those comments and having used that particular platform to raise those issues. So if you look at that, we are also hearing, for example, today that the South African army could be in Russia with the Russian counterpart of the military there in some kind of a fact-finding mission of some sort. And you then read the statement that was issued by the president today. Do you find that there is consistency in South Africa's commitment to this non-aligned position?
I believe that the statement of the presidency and the readiness to investigate independently the matter is welcomed, and we're looking forward to the results of this impartial investigation.
Why is that investigation important to you? What are you hoping it will reveal, and what will it tell you then about South Africa's position?
Now, all the issue is about whether South Africa did or didn't supply arms to the country who is waging its brutal and unprovoked war in Ukraine, killing Ukrainian civilians and destructing Ukrainian infrastructure. And it is a very important momentum for the bilateral relations between South Africa and Ukraine to have a clarity on the matter. That is why it is important.
Right. And we hear that the president of South Africa made a call to the president of the Ukraine also this past weekend, and they discussed how South Africa can certainly assist the Ukraine and intervene as far as the peacekeeping efforts that Ukrainians are trying to embark upon. Just elaborate on that a little bit. What does it actually mean?
It's not a secret, and it's very public, that Ukraine came up with a peaceful formula. We call it 10-point peace formula of Zelensky. And it was announced in December. We officially invited all countries in the world to participate in this formula. Just to a little bit elaborate on that, we are talking about lasting and sustainable peace and security guarantees for Ukraine and restoration of its territorial integrity. As war have absolutely different dimension, starting from the active destructions, but also it influences the food security, the energy security, it influences the ecosystem, and all these repercussions have to be addressed. And that's why this formula consists of 10 points, and each country is inviting to join this formula entirely or to choose one of the points and to assist all of us to restore international law. But the first thing for us Ukrainians to restore peace and sustainable stability in the region.
Yeah.
And of course, we have to address the issue that Russia will not be able anymore ever in the history to attack another independent country. So this is the major point that was discussed during the telephone call, and we will very much welcome South Africa to participate in this peace formula.
Yeah. What role do you think South Africa can play in that 10-point plan?
There are different chapters, as I said, in this plan. One of them is the respect to the United Nations Charter, giving the credit to South Africa's history of a struggle with apartheid and building democracy. I think this is something that South Africa would really play a crucial role. On the other hand, Ukraine and South Africa are sharing the common history in abandoning their nuclear arsenals, and the nuclear blackmailing by Russia of the world is something that probably we bilaterally could address as well. Yeah. As of today, the one of the biggest nuclear plants in Ukraine is captured by Russians, and there is a strong, huge military build-up just on the plant, and this is already not safe, not for only Ukraine, but for entire region, and it will definitely have, if something goes wrong, it will have complications for the entire world. Now, so I would say that what first comes in my mind is these 2 points of the peace formula.
Yeah. South Africa, according to the president, believes that they have kept up with that commitment to the United Nations, and we'll talk a little bit more about how they think, for example, the UN Council, Security Council itself, could assist as far as remodeling itself. But listen to what the president says. He says, as a country, we are committed to the articles of the United Nations Charter, including the principle that all members shall settle their international disputes by peaceful means. We support the principles that members should refrain from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of other states. So they're saying that's exactly what they are doing. Are you seeing that in practice, though?
Well, this is what the UN Charter is about. And all of us have the obligation to adhere to it. And basically what the President says is something that we are expecting to see in action. Definitely Ukraine in other different conflicts also calling for the peaceful solutions, for dialogues and negotiations. The issue and the complexity of Russia's aggression in Ukraine is that Russian side doesn't want peace talks, and it doesn't want peace. And the proof of that is that it is continue to destroy Ukraine and to and try to legitimize or justify its action through different propaganda.
Yeah.
That's why we definitely need to address Russia on international fora and to look at its participation in such forums because the country aggressor and violator of all possible norms and rules of international law cannot be equally sitting on that forums today.
Yeah. Ambassador, just out of interest, I mean, the United States say that there could have been arms that were loaded onto that vessel. Did they engage you on that matter as the Ukraine? Have they provided you with any information to that regard?
Well, not to my knowledge as ambassador. I think that this particular issues to be discussed on the level of the special services or intelligences, but as the embassies were not receiving or sharing such an information.
Right. Is there a political solution to this? Because South Africa believes that a political intervention can resolve the conflict in Russia and Ukraine, and they are calling on the United Nations to lead that particular process and intervene.
There should be certain preconditions in order we could sit at the table of negotiations. And first, and the major one, is the withdrawing of Russian troops from the territory of Ukraine. Recognized, the territory, the borders, internationally recognized by every UN member, including South Africa. And, of course, the ceasefire. They have to stop waging this war of aggression. And then the room of opportunities for negotiations will be opened.
UN Security Council itself, do you think there needs to be a remodeling or shall I say a reform of its structures? Can they do better in addressing international conflict? That's the issue that the president seems to be raising.
For many years, Ukraine was supporting initiative of reforming of UN Security Council. We were supporting the African continent in their desire to have an equal representation in permanent seats in the UN Security Council. So the need for the reform was obvious long before the start of war in 2014. Today what we see is that UN Security Council doesn't have, and UN itself doesn't have a mechanism how the country aggressor can be responsible for waging war and to committing the war crimes and crimes against humanity.
Yeah.
So definitely we will speak today about the urgent need of reforming of UN Security Council.
Ambassador, I suppose for many South Africans, and they would like to hear what Ukraine thinks about this particular matter and what your position is, the International Criminal Court issuing that warrant to arrest President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, when he lands in South Africa, if he comes for the BRICS summit. Would you want to see South Africa execute that warrant of arrest?
Let's first of all understand why this warrant was issued. The accusation is not just the accusation without facts. The confirmed facts is basically that Russia forcibly taking our children from territory of Ukraine and bringing them to Russia. And we don't know even the real numbers, because the documented numbers that were submitted to the ICC was that fact that we could prove. And on the temporarily occupied territories, the numbers are much higher, and we cannot even estimate them properly today. So the warrant was issued, and it's a lifelong warrant. That is why we expect that every country signatory to the Rome Statute would fulfill its obligation under this statute and to arrest this dictator, this neo-colonizer, in any country where he would try to visit.
Ambassador, appreciate your time. Thank you very much for coming on tonight.